to recess. When he announced the 11 p.m. Recess, 40 minutes recess rather, to resume at 11 p.m., we had people who had said, look, maybe we should resume tomorrow, but he's determined to continue. But let me also tell you that today is the busiest day since the Collation Center resumed on Saturday. Since Sunday evening rather, we had one day, one state taking on Saturday, on Sunday evening rather. We had about 13 states taking on Monday evening, and today alone we've had 18 states and the FCT results being announced here at the Collation Center. We've had several comments coming in today as well, several reactions. Just earlier, we had the chairman of the Inter-Party Advisory Council, Yabagi Sani, speaking here. We also had the national chairman of the ZLP, Dan Ayanwo, also speaking. Both of them just in support of INEC continuing the process. But let me speak to someone who monitored the process, one of the domestic observers here today. He is Victor Giwa. He's the national coordinator for Advocate for People's Rights and Justice. We started a conversation earlier, and I just want to conclude that conversation with him. Now, let's talk about the issues around the voter turnout. I know you monitor the process. Now, a lot of people have said, particularly this year, looks like the voter turnout was low when you look at the number of registered voters compared to the number of accredited voters. You were on the field. What did you notice?
Okay, I think that perception is wrong, because this particular election has experienced a huge turnout, and of course the issue of accredited voters is a function of the beavers, and you could see a lot of it got to a point where some voters in, like what the INEC chairman called community conspiracy, that is conspiracy between the voters and the INEC staff, they agreed to say, okay, let us do away with the beavers, because a lot of them have experienced the fact that the beavers takes quite some time for he to get them accredited so that they can vote. So majorly,
did you observe a situation where that happened, where the community were the ones who said, let us do away with the beavers and just vote?
Okay, I actually observed in the FCT and actually in AMAC, which is the center of the town. Now, but the point is that I didn't observe that, but I'm making reference to what the INEC chairman said about where in one of the states it was said that the reason why they had as much as 17 units cancelled is because of not the bypassing of the beavers. And the chairman said that when one of the party agents asked what happened, the chairman explained that there are some cases where voters and ad hoc staff will agree in the community consent to say, look, maybe in a particular polling unit, they will just say, do you know what? We want all these guys to get to vote, to cast their vote. If this beavers is the problem, let's bypass it. Now, in those places I observed, of course, I noticed where beavers was the major challenge. Now, it was not just that the beaver is faulty, but because of the pressure of persons. Of course, you understood the fact that a lot of INEC staff came late to the polling unit, and of course, they came in amidst a huge amount of people waiting for them. So there was pressure on the ad hoc staff, and there was pressure in the use of beavers, and of course, that led to a lot of glitches in the usage of the beaver. So that's exactly what is the cause for the number of accredited. You will see a case where you have 1 million, 2 million, 2-point-something million registered voters, and you will now see a case of 300 accredited voters. It is majorly because of the function of the beavers. That is what has led to that level, those low turnout, low accredited voters, not because they were low people who came to the polling unit to cast their votes.
So basically, there were more people that was captured by the beavers. There were
less people that were captured by the beavers.
So I was saying that there were more people at the polling unit, and less that were captured by the beavers.
And election is timed 8:30 to 2:30, except in cases where the ad hoc staff came into the polling unit very late, there will be an extension. But if there is no extension, if the ad hoc staff come to the polling unit as at when the election is supposed to start by 8:30 and 2:30. And so anybody who is not within the queue as at 2:30, you cannot vote. So that is one of the reasons that led to the low voters captured by the beavers.
Hopefully, INEC addresses this in the coming elections, but there are a lot of issues coming up, and we'll continue to have this conversation with those who monitor the election. Thank you so much for talking to us, Victor Giwa, National Coordinator, Advocates for People's Rights and Justice.
Thank you.
So we will, like I said earlier, we want to continue to have this conversation with people who monitor the election. We're speaking to another domestic observer of this particular election just to get her views as to how this process played out, the quality of the process, and what INEC can do more to improve on the process. Please join us. So we're speaking with, please tell us your name.
Faith Mwadishi, the Executive Director, Center for Transparency Advocacy.
All right, thank you so much for joining us. Now, I want to ask you, because one of the things I have also noticed as INEC collation officers continue to reel out the figures is the voided votes, the number of rejected votes. What does that tell you about the voter education in this particular election?
What it shows and has always shown at every election is that we need to do more on voter education, especially the political parties. They need to tell the electorate how to vote, where to vote, so that they don't get their votes voided. And also on election day, the presiding officer should be able to tell voters how to fold the ballot paper, because most of those voided votes come from folding the ballot paper. The fact that the ink also overlaps into other areas. So that's what we need to really do. It shows that we have not really done so much on voter education, especially on how to thumbprint the ballot paper.
And I know that we're still in the euphoria of this particular election. We're not done. But we have, again, people always say that INEC has 4 years to prepare for the next election. What should INEC begin to do now in terms of voter education?
INEC should collaborate very well with the National Orientation Agency. I think we should actually call it the National Orientation Agency. The Electoral Act provides that INEC should do voter education, but again, there's also the mandate for the National Orientation Agency to continuously do civic education, and voter education is a part of civic education. So we all need to do that, including civil society, of course, and then let it be one of the priority activities of the political parties, because at the end of the day, they're the ones who really benefit from that. So if you're not putting money aside to teach people how to vote for you so that your votes don't get voided, and you're putting other things as priority, it means that you need to take a step back and reconsider what is the kind of messaging you need to give to people. Because considering the number of voided votes that you have, it could have actually added value to somebody's votes.
Absolutely. But let me also get your thoughts on this. You've been following the collation process. You've been seeing the reaction so far. What's your thoughts on this particular process? It's been quite fast today. We've taken 19 announcements of the results from 19 states. What's your thoughts on the entire process?
I see a lot of things coming out. There's a pattern that is coming out. You know, a lot of people have complained about the process itself, the voting process. But there's so many good things that have come out, and also looking at the integrity of the election itself. You're seeing where ordinarily in the past and historically where people have not won elections, you're seeing people winning elections, you're seeing incumbent governors losing election, you're seeing new players on the block. It shows that, one, we are maturing, citizens are beginning to understand the power that they have to hire and fire. The politicians at the end of the day will take a step back and do an assessment of how they have led all these years, and understand that where they don't work well, you understand, the citizens can actually use their votes to do that. I am from Delta State. I'm looking at and just saw the result from Delta State. Delta State, the party has been like a religion in Delta State, and suddenly you see the kind of results that are coming out. You look at the different zones. It's not just about, you're looking at North Central, you're looking at Northwest, Northeast, and the pattern of voting shows that citizens are beginning to be aware that they can actually do something with their PVCs and their voting power.
Thank you so much for speaking to us. We know that the collation will commence in a few minutes, so we'll allow you to go to have some rest before collation begins. So, Esther, I mean, you've heard from domestic observers as to how the process played out. They speak to the integrity of the process. They also speak to the voter turnout and why voter education should start now ahead next election, even though we're still basking in the euphoria of this particular election. Esther.
All right, Precious Amayo, live for us from Abuja. Thanks a lot for the updates there.
We are watching the session 2023, and we have been bringing you live coverage of from the National Collation Center in Abuja and from the various state collation centers in the 36 states, including the FCT. I want to say thank you so much for staying with us. I still have with me in the studio Larry Suraj is the chairman, header, resource. Thank you so much for staying through with us.
My pleasure.
And thank you so much for honoring our invitation. And I also have Olayinka Ola Daniels, a legal practitioner, to help us better understand the dynamics in this election, because there have been a lot of permutation as to what numbers would give a particular person the seat of the presidency. But just before we go into all the permutations, and because today we all became mathematicians calculating 25% of each state, including the FCT, or does it include the FCT and stuff. But before we get to that conversation, I'd like us to take a look at the numbers that we've seen from 32 states now, including the FCT. So we have 4 states to go from the National Collation Center. And any moment from now, the INEC chairman, of course, would resume seating at the ICC, and then we'll get to hear more about the 4 states. That's the 4 remaining states. But looking at what we've seen play out, in the 32 states, including the FCT, and the performances of the various political parties, I know that the obedience movement, actually, I know you wouldn't call them a movement, but okay, let's maintain the Labour Party. Looking at how the Labour Party fared in this election, wouldn't you say if the People's Democratic Party had maintained a united front, possibly they might have been able to push out the APC?
Oh, yeah, there's no doubting that fact. Yeah, so, well, because there are quite a number of things that actually changed. Unfortunately, I am not too sure if that would have been really the case, because, I mean, being frank and really direct to the point, it is not only just that it is the ethnic system that worked in this election. There's also the religious angle to it. So there's a religious angle that some of the Christian pastors went all out to say, you have to vote for the only Christian candidates that you have on the ballot box. So quite a number of people were actually voting along the religious line. Still maintaining a united front with PDP, except that maybe Obi would have been the presidential candidate. But if it was to repeat what happened in 2019 with Obi as the deputy or the vice president to Atiku, it might then really not have been easy for there to have been that religious. It is not impossible to the extent that APC presented a Muslim ticket. So that also might have created some measure of a campaign opportunity and mobilization around the religious ethnic. But the kind of gravitation of the young people towards the campaign at this period in time is such that it's not impossible. You have some increased number of participation and voters, but it might not have been as really holistic as we have it. And like I said earlier, there's no doubt in the fact that we've gone really, really far from our past with the election of this 2023. You can see the result, like you're saying, the 23 already, the 32 that we've seen that is coming out. You can see the kind of upset that you're witnessing. Except you want to be hypocritical or deceitful. You can't really have, it is not just about Lagos and Katsina. Look at what happened in Kaduna. You have an APC governor. And look at PDP actually winning with the result that we saw with Atiku winning in Kaduna. Look at the APC governor in Kano. Look at the result with Kokonzo and the margin, that you have between NNPP and APC and the rest. So you can see the upsets that are. Oh, look at, you have the same thing in Yobe. You have APC governor. Look, PDP won in Yobe. I mean, these are the usual thing that you would have actually witnessed in the past. Even as close as 2019, where it would have been closely a situation of the ruling party winning in most of the elections. I mean, you don't want to talk about 1999, 2003, 2007, when the results are even written before election itself. So we've made significant progress, and we must be able to continuously spell this out, ram it in for people to appreciate it. We can't pretend as if we're not coming from somewhere. No, we were not coming from a perfect election like you have in the Western and developed world to where we are. No, we were coming almost from ground zero, and we've been going progressively from 2015 to 2019, and now we've actually crowned that with such a situation where we can see now that the votes are counting. And what we're seeing as a result are the counted votes that actually happened at the polling unit. Anything to the contrary can always be easily challenged and also verified.
The power of the third force, of course, is having an almost unpredictable effect on the elections and even on Nigeria's democracy, because if you take a look at what we will have in the National Assembly, we're seeing a very colorful National Assembly. Look at Etiosa, for instance. A lot of persons would have probably have been rooting for the PDP candidate, which is Banky W, because it resonates with a lot of young people. But interestingly, it popped up somebody that people didn't really know.
We never campaigned even.
Mr. Thaddeus Atta. Like, do you understand? So I want you to help us better understand. Because a lot of persons may have written off the power of the third force. I can remember when, we were talking about and discussing would a third force really be able to show some strength, but how do you think this would shape our democracy in time to come?
Well, this question is weighty, and I'll be careful not to descend into the arena. The third force and the implication to democracy. Is there a third force or a mirage? How do I mean? Because we are seeing it as a third force. But critically looking at it, how did it come to be? Is it on credibility, on competency, on accountability, on issue-based, or because some pastors told some people you cannot vote Muslim, and we need to vote for the only Christian. Now, no issue-based argument here.
No, but there are fundamental issues.
Yeah.
If you take a look at how young persons have come out to demand certain things from the government, I'd like us to stay put on the Muslim ticket, the Christian, and all of that variables that actually played out in this election. Of course, it has its place. But if you take a look at the issues that are fundamental in going into this election, the youths wanted somebody they could resonate with.
That is the reason why I'm saying. That's the reason why I'm saying the question is. Yeah, that's the reason why I'm saying we have to look at this critically. This question is, if we are not careful, we will not deal with it. Precisely. The youth we are talking about, he doesn't believe in the movement, but I still believe that there's a movement from the youth.
There's a movement.
And now they got angry, and to them, they were tired of the norms. Now, what do they call norms?
That's valid in some quarters.
I'm not disputing it. That's why I'm going somewhere. I'm not disputing it. Now, they are saying we are tired of the status quo. We are tired of the old order. We need a change. We need now the change. They ask them on issue-based questions. They can't answer you. Majority, let me put it that way. One thing about movement is a crowd, and in fact, they would even tell the crowd, look, And we know your parent will tell you this, but look, we need to stay. We need to stay here. This is what we want to achieve. So the people there, they are even following them, don't even know the reason why they are following them.
So
They're just moving. Now, that movement transposed to then with the pastor doing their own thing, everybody transposed to the third phase. Now, why I said, is it a third phase or a mirage? Can it be sustained for the next? Can it move from where we are today, now transposed to issue base, and now say, okay, thank God, now we know that the power belongs to the people. We know that we can actually vote, and we know that our vote can actually be, counted. Now, let us move from where we are today. That is why I always say that I hope that this will not just be a one-off thing. Because why I'm still skeptical about this election also is the number. The number.
that's the voting population now.
No, thank
the
you.
people that actually came out
the
on
turnout
election day.
is really low. Even coupled with the new the new wave voters and all that, the number is low. So that is the reason why I'm saying, yes, I agree that yes, there's progress as to the structure, to the system and all that, there's progress. But to us as the people, because if we are not doing 25 million in 2023, and in 2019, we did close to 30 million, then what has happened? Can we say there's progress in our numbers? Yes. The third phase, well, it has done a lot in our political system. As in, one thing it has really done is to tell people that, look, the power belongs to the people. We can actually achieve this if we put our mind here. Then, the one I need us to jettison is those things that are attached, the bandwagons that are attached to it, like the ethnics, the religion, the whatever. So we look at issue-based argument, and okay, this is what we want. And not just that, okay, people have told you, they have their own personal agenda, they have their own motive, but because they need to lure you to get you to their camp. So they will tell you that this is what they need. We need a new government, we need a new order, we need things to change, we need to progress. These people, we are tired of these old people, they need to go. That is what they tell you, and that is what you believe. Meanwhile, by the time you get it, you see the same thing play out. Because these same people, look, let me say this. Probably if the wonderful youth had said, okay, we want to have Kingsley Moghalu, he's not been one of them. We want to have, what are those young people, the one that came out in 2019 thereabout.
Sure.
We want to have, okay, our tent.
Imomulen.
Our tent, we want to put it to this. Fine, I'm good. This man that you said you're following, we know his movement. He's one of the politicians. So now, are you sure that you're not being led in a particular way? Now we're from the third phase. I want to see that it's not business as usual in Nigerian political system. That henceforth, the game automatically changes. Now, even by the time old people get to say, oh, let us re-strategize, it would have been too late for them to beat, this new order. That is, if we are serious and we want to maintain it, we want to be committed to this new order, and want to progress from where we are today. It is not, I've been saying this, that, look, it is not about 2023. In fact, when this whole thing, I said, I'm not bothered about 2023. I just need all of us to be involved and take whatever the time is going to take us. Be involved in fact, I was even telling them, into all this existing party, don't tell me you want to go and start a new party. No. Get into this old party. Is by numbers. That's democracy. So it's a game of numbers. So we will get there. We will overtake someday. It may not be one day. But by the time we are overtaking and we're playing the game to their own table, it's too late. And by that time, we're saying something different, and we're going to have a new Nigeria. And I pray to see the 31st not dying with 2023 and moving beyond this. Maybe in the next maybe 4 or 16 years, Nigeria will be, in a better place. And I also believe that the incoming administration will give us a foundation that will let us get there. Thank you.
So if you take a look at what played out on Saturday into Sunday, because we understand that some places they were still voting and sorting and counting happening at polling PU levels, ward levels in various states. What group do you think made a difference? If you take a look at the numbers that we have seen so far in this election.
The group.
The demography, the group that made a difference.
No, even though earlier he was thinking that, he was also alluding that it was the youth that was actually moving, but it's obvious that when we look at the total number, it has really not shown any sort of a huge paradigm shift from what has been the numbers before now. So it is still telling you that we really don't have, like I said, any movement. We have seen a campaign. We have seen some level of participation, which we continue to sometimes just want to convince ourselves that what we assumed was going to happen was really what was happening. And I made that abundantly clear from what we've seen during the election, the people that we saw on the queue, the final outcome of the vote, we really didn't see what we expected. We really weren't seeing these young people leading at the voting center. We really didn't see the number that would have increased the tally in terms of the total number of people that voted in the election. Even when you look at the result that were coming out from the Southeast, you can see how really pathetic the number of the votes are very small. Even though you have few numbers of registered voters coming from that part, but you can still see that the number of people that went out were still far cry from the expectation. And you were having like 20-25% of the registered voters. That is not when you're talking about movement. And I couldn't help but just laugh when we relate some of these, pocket of things. And like, for me, it is nothing really more than a flash. It becomes even an agreement when you can see sustained involvement in the process post the election. This is just the test to know exactly what we're talking about. This is supposed to be something that when you're talking about a movement, it will not be restricted to just some parts of the country and you want to take control of the whole country. That is not how movement works. There are processes that will start evolving over time, that you have to start building and you start connecting. It is not something that you would be exclusively limited to a certain part of the whole that is not capable of making the necessary and required change. If it has not been for the sake of the beavers, I can assure you that the politicians would have completely had a different result emerging from this election. So irrespective of all the campaign and whatever, it would be a different ball game entirely. But the whole campaign that started, that is called movement, was assisted by the beavers to now achieve these results that you're seeing the changes that, like you said, inevitably there's going to be colorful National Assembly next. So excited, so very happy colorful about that. So it is going to be more someone from SDP. Two, not one. Two from SDP, just one from APC. Even though with that SDP too, I think it's been interesting, and we should also remarkably get this very clearly. And that will tell you, again, for some of those, for some of us that are interested in researches and statistics, those two states showed to me clearly that our voters are becoming more conscious and are becoming more educated and exposed. Nasarawa State, 1, Oyo State, 2. Oyo State had the APC. I'm still waiting for the Rivers State. Maybe that would also make the third one. Oyo State had the APC highest number of votes for the presidential. It had different political parties for the National Assembly. So PDP was winning. So they were able to do APC for president and then separate it for PDP for Senate and possibly APC or PDP for. That is highly remarkable. That was what you saw with Nasarawa. It's different from what you saw in Lagos. And that a classical example was what happened with Etiosa.
Etiosa.
So it was just a function of anything that is just, once you just get there, you see LP. Yeah. If the other person that is there in the other one, because the LP, the interest is just in the presidential. So if the other one is an animal, also it is just the one with the LP logo, just put it there. That was not the kind of dynamism that we saw in Oyo, and we have seen in, because SDP was the 2 senators and the APC 1 senator in Nassau, but the presidential total figure was for LP. So you can still see how people are becoming more conscious in terms of where they want to put the votes. And that is where you can say you're seeing some gradual process of what you call a movement, where people can distinguish. It is not a function of the bandwagon or just a... No, that is where you can see things that are organically evolving. And we need to nurture for people to start separating and say, yes, I would support a particular candidate because of the profile, the integrity, the track record. If it's in this party A, and I'm going to go to this other person, though is in party B, but I can vouch for the integrity of that person. I can vouch for this. I know him to be this, not because he's a Muslim, he's a Christian, or he's from my ethnic. It doesn't really matter. It has to be issue-based. And that is what we call a kind of a movement. The one that we're seeing now, like I said, don't let us pretend about what it is. It is such that it gives an opportunity for both religious and ethnic consideration for the support for and the campaign for the candidate. Remove those two from the campaign of this election, we would have a complete different outcome in the February 25th outcome of the election.
And I think some of that thing that also played out, is the economic factor, which, came at the twilight of before the election, the cash crunch, the fuel scarcity that also prompted people to say, oh, come on, I think we're done with
I think a lot of people were angry, a lot. No cash. To them, they don't have access to their money, and they're suffering. They couldn't buy anything. People were hungry, all that. Then also, no fuel. You still have to queue, and you go to the filling station. You can't even spend the money.
There's like a joke of you pay to buy cash. You carry the cash.
Nigerian cash to buy.
Use it to go and buy petrol. You queue for you queue with the petrol you bought, and then you come.
That also could affect the low turnout. Really, it could affect the low turnout. People who no, and they want us to go and vote. So why are you doing this? If you want to get at your people, politicians, but not to us. But the truth is, except we're going to deceive ourselves, this policy was political. Wrong timing. We just came out from lockdown, COVID, lockdown. We had not gotten ourselves. Then suddenly, unpopular policy towards election that that ordinarily people panic. Oh, we don't know what will happen. They may fight. So people want to buy food, keep in their houses, to eat, to just sit down and eat. We don't know what will happen next. Now, they can't do that because they don't even have access to their own money. So all that could discourage people to say, please, I'm sitting back. And though, aside from few people that we saw that some had to travel because they couldn't, they couldn't change their polling units, and they had to travel a night to sleep at some hotel. That is the people that could afford that. People that can't afford it, of course, they will have to stay back wherever they are. That day, when I came out to vote, because I was an observer before I started going around, when I came out to vote, my usual polling unit, my number was, my name wasn't there. Was 029. My name wasn't there. So I had to, they told me, okay, they moved some 029, maybe to some other. So we went there. We got there. We saw a number of names. My name wasn't there. If I was not the only one, number of us went to the third one. Our names were not there. In fact, we now had to turn to go to another street entirely. Another polling unit entirely, 051. Well, it was when we got there, we now went to check the name on the list. In fact, few people among all of us that went there, few saw their name. Well, maybe here because they tore all the papers.
Right.
We couldn't see all our names. And by the time they started checking, that was a PU polling unit 051. But when we got there, we saw all our names in that polling unit.
Interesting.
So all that need to be fixed. Okay, if let's say okay, assuming without conceding that you have more registered voters for that area, why don't you leave the old ones
Where they
in that
were.
particular unit? Then the other one, the new registered one, move them to another. So when it's easier for them to say, okay, maybe their polling unit, they are newly registered, but your polling unit is now at 051. Not moving the 021. They went all the way. They were checking different polling units before we got to that place.
saw that.
And some persons could have been
I saw that.
discouraged.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I saw that.
We had
movement restriction.
We had few people at the second polling unit. They said they were not going anywhere.
Yeah, absolutely.
They left.
I saw,
and they went
I saw
home.
that as well.
So we had all that.
INEC didn't really do well with the communication of the delimitation. I mean, yeah, it is valid because otherwise, leaving some polling units with about 5,000, 3,000 registered voters might actually stretch, the voting time and becomes difficult to close at the appointed closing time. So they have to then move them away from some of the polling units. But there was really no sufficient communication to people. And yes, there was a whole thing about people checking on the phone. But how many people are able to use the internet or having internet-enabled phone or even the internet working on that?
Mine was still saying 029.
Oh, can you imagine
But
that?
I traveled to.
Can you imagine
I was
that?
just determined I was going to be, and again, I was wearing my jacket. Okay, I will go around and see what is happening. So.
And another thing, I would, let's just sustain this conversation about INEC and how well they prepared for this election. Well, a lot of persons have commended beavers, the use of beavers for this election, and as to the fact that it has been able to curb election rigging to some extent. But if you take a look at voter education, which is what is responsible for a large or low turnout of voters in election, and then you still see that on election day when they are sorting and counting, there are still some invalid votes. People voting, out of the line and all that stuff. But do you think INEC actually did a lot of education for this election?
Well, let us not make the mistake of just holding INEC responsible for that. Those that equally share the same amount of responsibility in terms of the education and sensitization are also the political parties. So they have a duty also to educate not only their supporters, but the citizens generally. It is not only just when you campaign that vote for me. You need to tell them how do they vote for you. And so the whole essence of educating the citizens. I mean, we have about 200 and something million Nigerians here. INEC is not able to reach every one of them. So the political party also will share in terms of that failure. So did INEC do very well? The answer would be no. Can they do better? The answer is yes. Are they the only one with that responsibility? The answer is also no. So for us, media, political parties, civil society, we also have that duty to educate the people on how the votes would have to be cast in a valid way, not the ones that will be voided. I mean, because it is not just what you see alone on TV, you hear on radio. There are other means of communication that you can reach out to. When you look at the void votes, it's really concerning with the number that comes out when you're listening to the scoop reeling out the figures. I mean, they're just not small numbers. When you're having 30,000, 20,000 of void votes, those are very serious concerns that people should take away from. But because many of the political parties and also stakeholders were more interested in who wins and who is losing, rather than looking at, because the figure, in some places you will be surprised that some of the candidates only need the voided votes to actually make them win or to make them tie. And you can't determine who were they actually voting for. But it means that it's important for you to actually be able to ensure that those education and sensitization, you're not doing it just for the people, you're doing it for yourself, because if they get it right, then your tally also will increase.
I will ask, what is the duty of the orientation agencies?
The National Orientation Agency, yeah, you're right, but unfortunately the government has not really, I mean, I know the agency very well. I mean, we've worked with them. The budget of that agency is not even sufficient to run a local government in what is allocated to it. And that is supposed, it is actually one of the highest human resource organization in this country, because it has offices in all the local governments. Unfortunately, they don't even have the funding to run any of those offices. They ended up at the mercies of either the local government official or
another thing, because I'm looking at the voter education now. Now, election has come and gone. I mean, we're collating, and maybe by next week, I mean, like that, and it's gone. Then the next thing, you don't hear anything about INEC.
Yeah.
Aside maybe in court.
Yeah.
Or if there's a by-election.
And the off-season election.
And what we're saying is this should be a continuous thing.
Yeah.
You need to, okay, I'll tell you something that happened at 2 different centers that I observed. There are 3 INEC officials. One was with the beavers. The other one was checking the names on the paper, people, voter register. And the third person, handling the ballot papers. The papers, stamping and all that, then she gave it to you then. Now, she will stand up and tell people how to cast their vote and explain how to tamper it. She was the one doing that.
Right.
Now, when she's done, she will go back to her seat. Now, people are on queue. They want to vote. She'll go back to her seat, and somebody will get there. She just announced. Another person will get there, and the person doesn't know how to do it.
Yeah.
Now, she will now have to stand up, teach the person how to cast the vote. Now, take the papers to the boxes with this person and drop the papers. In fact, number of old people, you know, we had that
in that
issue.
situation.
So now, for how long are we going to, I mean, all the people that are on the queue to vote, how are we going to do that? So there are 3, meaning that they should start.
Yeah.
Because on that, they should have probably add an extra person, one other person that will be doing all that, and leave the other madam to concentrate on her own job. So you can say that 1, they should start. 2, the education and people, we have a lot of elite. In fact, you see people that you don't, they are not even old people. So you think an average person, you should know what to do. But they don't know. So there's a lot to be done with this voters' educations and all that, so that people will even understand. And because that's it. I saw, like you said, somebody will go, oh, president, just tampering the president and drop every other thing.
Blank.
No National Assembly, Senate. It wasn't bothered.
Yeah.
We had lots of them that did that. And that's how, I mean, the result that, you know, returned some people or gave some people the Senate, and meanwhile they won. That part, because they were not voting for those other ones. In fact, there's another one, because it was just Labour and it was just the presidency. He voted Labour on president, and the other paper, he thumbprint several boxes. And I'm wondering that what is happening. So you see also, so there's serious education, like you said, on this.
Another thing, you know, that you know, very interesting conversation that I think a lot of us should be talking about is how did the women fare in this election? If you take a look at the number of women that we had on the ballot paper in the first place, we had just 1 female presidential candidate, and we had just about 18 or 20 something or thereabout persons wanting to represent Nigerians in the Senate and also in the House of Representatives. But how did they fare in this election?
Well,
because if you take a look at, you know, how the conversations have been going, you know, how we want women to participate in the election, how they can actually, you know, create the desired change that we want to see. How did they fare?
For me, first, I always, salute the women that I see in such a gathering when it comes to politics, like the particularly contestants or people that are really involved, women that are really involved. I give it to them, and aside that, men need to find a way, probably the different political parties maybe need to look at their constitutions to include more of women in the activities, whether as a contestant or as different offices in the political parties. But most times you see that behind them. The men take over most of the offices. The men are the one, and to them, maybe, I don't know whether they still believe that women belong to the kitchen. So then the women also, whether they are timid or sometimes, don't forget, some women, probably they don't get the support of their husband, or they don't get the support of the family to go ahead, because some of probably the husband, they are scared. Politics is a dirty game. Please, I need my wife in peace and all that. So you don't get that support, because we need to weigh it, both sides. We cannot just say the men are denying the women from coming forward, but the truth is, are the women coming forward? And when so we need to balance it. So the women need to come forward. They're not going to force them. They need to come forward. Then when they are now denied, or because what we hear, maybe one woman will come and the next thing is advocating for women involvement in politics, and she's doing that. And the other women are not even, they don't even care.
But if you take a look at, the women contestants, that's the candidates we've had in some states. For instance, the one we have in Kogi, and Lagos State. Those are the ones I can remember for now. And do you think male voters or voters are actually ready to vote the women that they see on the ballot? Because if you eventually emerge as a candidate from your political party, it means you have what it takes to represent that particular constituency. So do you think the male voters, though that's the voters, now let me not say the male voters, but do you think the voters are ready to elect women in these positions?
Well, I think it is still very difficult for many of the voters to determine the candidate for support based on gender consideration. It is still not really resonating with many of our voters, and there's still a whole lot of work to be done. Again, I would take it to the political parties. The political parties have actually failed woefully in doing that. And if I want to really dissect the political parties with that level of failure, the loudest of them is the APC formation.
Why would you say that?
Yeah, because when they started, even right from 1999, and then suddenly it moved on when they also regained, they lost the fin in 2003, and they regained their control in 2007, 2011. They had, in the Southwest, they had female deputy governors. In Ekiti, in Osun, in Oyo, in Ogun, and in Lagos. Now what do you have? They've completely reversed that trend. You have male deputy governors. Save for Ogun State, you don't have anyone again in the whole of Southwest. So that was supposed to have been a progression that would have assisted not only the party sustaining that recognition of the role that the women would play, but also mobilizing the consciousness of their members on the need to look out for women for positioning in elective and appointed position. But unfortunately, they changed that. The PDP would possibly would have done one or two, but it's not been a conscious. But you will be shocked that they have it in their constitution, that they will have what is called the 30%, 35% affirmative action. But they just don't practice what they have in the constitution. They don't even look at it. But the truth of the matter is, it is not out of place that the men will have to make a conscious, very conscious effort at ensuring that anytime we're having this, even when the women don't come out, we need to encourage them consistently and continuously to come out and fill up some of those positions. It is not, I mean, if you look at the experience of the Natasha in Kogi and all the hurdles she had to cross between her, I mean, that is not encouraging. That is not the kind of situation that you want to expose any woman to. And that is not what any child will want the mother to go through, or the husband or the wife.
Shouldn't even go
Absolutely.
through that process.
And no man should even attempt that on any woman for that matter. I mean, politics is not a do or die affair. We should leave such mentality with people who preached it, and God has actually assisted in getting them out of power. So this is where it is important that the political terrain and landscape must be operated in such a way that it allows for women. I mean, the meeting of 3 o'clock in the night, 4 o'clock in the night can resonate with men. That is not the kind of thing that we want with women. I mean, we want the women who knows that they have children, they have husband, they need to also be part of the house. They can't be cut out for that kind of thing. So politicians, political party will have to understand this, and that makes it easier for the women folk to participate in the process. But when these are not considered, during primaries, women are not looked out for. When they do, they're looking for the children of the political godfather, the wife of the politician, or the wife of the governor. No, that is not when you actually bring in women on board. We need to bring women with competence, the ones who can actually represent the interest of women, not because they are the daughter of whoever or the wife of whoever, but it's because they have been champion and advocate of women right issues, women participation, and the empowerment of women.
Okay, let's just remind our viewers that we'll be going to the National Coalition Center in Abuja, that's ICC, of course, to bring you updates of the remaining states that are yet to present the results from the various states for the presidential election. We'll definitely bring you updates from ICC in a moment. That's when INEC chairman resumes seating. For now, we understand that we have 32 states, including the FCT, in the bag, and we're just waiting for 4 more states to read and present their results. Well, let's continue the conversation here in the studio and talk about what we refer to as electoral violence and voter intimidation. Of course, we saw some videos that popped up during the elections, some fake. Anyways,
Yeah.
some were from previous elections,
Yes.
but then there were some that were actually real. You heard accounts from some voters, about how they were intimidated in some polling units by various political parties now, not just one political party. And electoral violence, not just on the voters now, but also on INEC ad hoc staff. Because I saw a video of some voters harassing a youth corps member and asking or demanding the youth corps member to do certain things, forgetting that this youth corps member is just serving the country, is serving the nation. How well do you think INEC, or should I say security agencies, or Nigeria, that's the government, can protect this exclusive, or should I say this ad hoc staff? Because it's very important that there is some sort of protection given to them. Because you heard the Festus Okoye also say that some ad hoc staff pulled out, from the process because of security situation.
Well, first I will say this, that so far we've been having election violence in 2023. It's been very, very fair compared to the years we've had in the past. Yes, maybe a pocket of violence here and there, but not as bad as how we used to
have in previous elections.
Meaning that I'm still emphasizing on progress, that we've had so far. Now, coming back to election violence, the law does not allow the security agencies to carry firearms at the polling unit. And also, because that has been properly, sent to the security agency. That's the reason why when you go to those polling units, you either see a police officer,
Immigration,
all of them, they're just sitting, they're just cautioning people, don't do this, don't do this. So you don't see any guns, you don't see anything with them. In fact, the one that has guns are far away. They're distance meters away from the polling unit so that they don't scare the electorate, the people, from coming out to cast their vote. Having said that, there is no how, because the only way, because some of these people, some of these violators and these violent people, they come with weapons. I don't know whether this is real. I saw one on social media where they came on a bike and they were trying to shoot, and the soldiers, whether it's here or something, I
No,
saw
that
something.
happened to be from Ghana, and
Oh,
they posed like it was like Nigeria.
Yeah, because I saw
When
that
they shot
uniform,
them-
I mean,
Yeah.
those
No, it
guys are
was
not
actually
from Nigeria.
yeah,
I
it was
said that,
from-
okay, you
it
can
was-
see what we say about social media, that, you know, they
The
put
fake
up,
news
or
that,
they
you
put
know,
up
was
all
all
sorts.
of that.
Now, so when these people come with weapons, and even the police or the security agency, whoever that is sitting at the polling unit doesn't have, how does the person protect the electorate, the INEC officials, himself or herself? So, if you remember, when the PRO came out to, when people were complaining that the police were there and they were snatching boxes, they were
And they
being
couldn't do
violent,
anything.
they couldn't do anything. He said, look, what can they do? They only say, oh, we'll report. They will report. That is all they can do. They don't have guns. They don't have anything. Yeah. So even they can be killed too. So there's nothing they can do at that point. So I think we still need to review our laws and to see, because the perpetrators, most times, even when they were maybe arrested or something, you don't get to hear whether they are prosecuted or whether anything happened, or maybe the police arrest them and they park them in prison. You then hear the Baba Saleh or somebody, you know, they put a call through tomorrow, and that's the end of it. So we really need to be serious about these laws. And I mean, enforcement. Sorry, the law is there. What we lack is enforcement. So we need to be serious about the enforcement on the electoral violence, so that any one court should face the music. Any one court should be prosecuted. See, by the time we prosecute, and they are, I mean, they face the music, they serve the punishment, others will see. And they will know that nobody is above the law. Whether you know, Mr. President, if you are caught, and you face the music. So probably that one will serve as a deter to some other, you know, violators of these laws. But if we keep patching, rubbing heads and saying, oh, there's pockets of violence here and there, and we're not doing anything about it, it will happen. Why would somebody be intimidating people at the polling unit to say you cannot vote for this or you can vote for that, or why are you here to know you cannot vote for this, or they are beat? Oh, why did you vote for a particular party and they are beating? Like so all that need to be checkmate. Once it's done, at least let the security personnel that is there put maybe a call straight up to, I mean, of course, they all have a nearby divisional police station or something, and they have their beats. So put a call to them. Let them come and pick whoever that is involved. Well, you don't get to see that most of the time. So this does not stop people from doing this year in, year out. We will have people continue violating this law. Why? Because nobody has been said to be prosecuted or face the music of this. Until when we get to that point, we may still be having pockets of violence here and there. But thankfully, I think maybe people are more enlightened today. We have more people because we've been telling them, look, if you die, you are gone. And these people will continue their life. And also, maybe now people are more enlightened. People now reason. Maybe that's the reason why it has really dropped to the barest minimum. But then, it can be out of our system as to electoral violence.
We hear the case of the scope for River State. You know, earlier today, I had said that it was being threatened, and he also said that the life of his family also was being threatened. And at a point, he said he wasn't going to continue to read the results or accept the results from the various local governments, although it was just remaining 2 local governments. And then later on, it resumed after various negotiations and consultations and assurances from the security agencies, you know, that they would protect him and that nothing would happen to him. Even after they resumed the collation process, he still had some party agents, you know, talking in the hall and then, you know, just aggravating and causing some sort of tension. But how well can we protect this INEC ad hoc staff? Because that's where the conversation, that's where the bane of contention is.
Yeah, I think you're hitting it on the head on how do we want to protect some of them. When you talk about the compromising of the electoral officers. It is not all of them that are almost doing it out of free will. There are some of them that are subjected to this level, of not only just threat and intimidation, but also the carrot and the stick. You either take this money or your family would go. And inevitably, you don't want to put your family at such risk. And people are forced to do the bidding of the people that are involved. But I think the first thing is I would want to look at about 3 stages of work that needs to be done. The first one would be for all the people and stakeholders involved to find reason to continuously orientate the people to understand the need for us to go for any form of election, any form of competition with the mentality of fair play. You can win or you can lose. It is a competition and it should be healthy competition. You don't have to snatch the ballot. And the interesting thing now is you snatch the ballot box, you intimidate the people, it doesn't get anywhere. Because
Instead,
you can't go and write, so it's still ultimately going to amount to a loss. That's the first one. The second one is that there's the need for the National Assembly to also pass the Electoral Offences Commission bill that will create that body that can prosecute the electoral offences. It is not now working because the bill they have refused to pass. So for the law enforcement agencies to prosecute some of the people that are apprehended during the electoral process, some of them that were apprehended during the Osun election by the EFCC, they took them to court, but unfortunately, they couldn't get the fiat that was needed from INEC to proceed with the prosecution, and the case was also thrown out of court. So you can't have that kind of situation. Once there is no punishment for offenses or crime, people are likely to just continue committing it because it becomes like an impunity. There's no payment for that. Then the citizens as well, we should be ready to be part of the process of not only apprehending some of these people, but ensuring that we volunteer available information and support the law enforcement agencies. When they are arrested, it is not just sufficient to say he was arrested at so place. There will have to be witnesses that must also assist the prosecution process for there to be conviction for of some of those offenses. So, but where we don't assist them or volunteer information, it becomes extremely difficult for the prosecution to happen at that stage. Our law enforcement agencies finally would also need to salvage the situation and save the country by ensuring that people that are arrested are duly prosecuted for their offenses. They shouldn't be compromising the cases based on the interference of the high and mighty or any other person that have the connection outside there to get people who are arrested out of the situation. So it is very critical that all the stages are put into consideration, and we ensure that we follow them as much as possible. Many of the people that are there to perpetrate the violence are many times from within the community where they carry those things out. So the people around there, if we are unable to apprehend them, we should be able to identify some of them that we can point them out to the law enforcement agencies for appropriate action.
I think my last question is based on the mathematics that we have been seeing since morning about what numbers, does it take, for a person to emerge candidate. But first of all, let me read what the Constitution says. It says that a candidate for an election to the office of the president shall be deemed to have been fully elected where there being more than 2 candidates for the election. A, it has the highest number of votes cast at the election, and B, it has not less than 1/4, that's 25% of the votes cast at the election in each of at least 2/3 of all the states in the Federation and the Federal Capital Territory, Abuja. Now, this is where the question is, the Federal Capital Territory, Abuja, where a lot of persons are saying, oh, is it that Abuja has a special place or a special status, unlike the other states? So help us better understand what this actually means so that we don't keep cracking our heads and becoming lawyers overnight.
All right. Thank God. Thank you. the law is not ambiguous at all. That particular section of the law is not ambiguous, except for the mischievous people. They just want to be mischievous about that law. You know, when people want to rake stuff to their side, they come up with also. Now, it says 24. Now, if you have 25% in 24 states, it was specific, or it is specific about the number in
24 states.
24 states. Then it went further to say earn FCT. It's not giving any special whatever to FCT. That is the reason why it went. If it was doing that, it would have specified. Maybe, and it must have gotten so number in FCT. It did not. It said, meaning that the person should have votes in FCT. So it doesn't have to be. It didn't say 25%. So he didn't put any percentage in FCT. It could be 10. It could be as long as the majority of you win the majority of the vote, and you have that 25 in 24 states. And yes, election was conducted in FCT. You can't say you won't have any. So there's nothing special about FCT.
So despite the number of states that you eventually win, it doesn't matter. So let's say if someone has maybe like 11 states, someone wins in 11 states, or another person wins in like 9 states, another person wins in like 8 states. So it doesn't matter how many states you actually win. What actually matters is the votes, or 25% that you get in this.
Yeah, what matters is the majority vote, and then the 25% in 2/3 of the 36 states. And FCT, it's a combined reading of the statement. There was no full stop and there's no comma that you can say now we are dealing with the FCT. It has said 36 states and the FCT. So what it's saying is you have 2/3 of 36. Because those ones have states, we don't call FCT states. So you could have said 2/3 of 37 states. Because Abuja is known as FCT. So that's why it says 2/3 in 36 states and FCT, Abuja. Until this election, because people are just looking for some form of excuses, crises, just create unnecessary heat. We've never had this argument about 25% in FCT separately before. It never came up in any of the conversation. So somebody must have just sat down somewhere and saw that, what is left? What is left? Okay, this is an opportunity. Let's go for this one.
And my take on that is, look, even if you are giving such interpretation, like, you know, people, like you said, everybody gives their own interpretation because they want something to decide. Then, unfortunately, it's not ambiguous on the Constitution. But if you think it is, then let the court
go and
interpret.
Go to talk.
That particular section.
So there's no basis.
So there's nothing INEC can do
must not declare
about
and
that.
I've been looking at that and say INEC must not declare.
The INEC has no business with that.
How?
INEC has no business. If you have any issues, then go to court. Let the court interpret that particular
I used
section.
that statement many times. The arrogance of ignorance in some Nigerians amazes me so many times. And because many of the interpretation statements and facts are based many times on sentiment. And that is where you see the whole disappointment with many people. They don't want to look at the objective reality of the situation. They just want the wish. So my wish is that this is the way that this must go. If the reality does not push it that way, my wish should be able to push it. If it's not pushing it, there must be crisis. We can't do things that way.
I'm afraid we have to leave the conversation here. Ibrahim Shita is already in the studio, of course, ready to take on the last lap of the conversation today. Well, this is Decision 2023 on TVC News, our special coverage on the presidential and National Assembly elections. Thank you so much, Mr. Larry Suraj. Thank you so much for joining us on the program. Mr. Olayinka Oladaniels, a legal practitioner. Thank you so much. And thank you so much for making this conversation very, very interesting. And to you, to stay tuned. This is TVC News.